Hey, I forgot who that was on there. Hello, everyone. Hello, hello. This is the Institute for Black Solidarity with Israel Forum on Israel, Africa, and Black America. Somebody just gave us a shout out there from Nappy Cali. I don't remember who that was, and I know that's in Zion, but I can't remember the handles on there. But Zion West, but shout out, much love to Zion West. Hello, 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 hello. Welcome, everyone, again to the Institute for Black Solidarity with Israel. I'm Dumisani Washington, the CEO and founder of IBSI. You can follow us on ibsi.org. I have not been with you for the last couple of months probably. And for those of you who are expecting the executive director, Joshua Washington, he's not here on today. He's fine. He's with his boys. But this is a special edition here in which we are Tanisha. Hey, Tanisha, how you doing? That's right. I couldn't remember the different handles and everything. Hi, sweetheart. And so we are live. We are live on all of our channels except for Clubhouse on today. And that's my bad. We weren't able to get that up. There's some technical things there, but on LinkedIn, on my LinkedIn, it won't be on the IBSI one just yet, but it's on my LinkedIn. If you're on LinkedIn, we're on Twitter, we are on Facebook, we are on YouTube Live, and also on Instagram, IG. So hello, everyone, and welcome to the weekly forum on Israel, Africa, and Black America. I hope you can hear me all right. I got my trusty producer there, Maria. She will let me know. The mic seems to be going pretty well. So we're going well here. We've been doing different stuff in the studio, different stuff in the makeshift studio, and all different things happening. So again, I want to welcome you here. We need to get into something very important on today. It's always important stuff going on when it comes to the discussion of Israel, Africa, and Black America. Again, you can go to ibsi.org and you can follow us there if you're new to us. You can check out what's there. There's videos that are there and education. The large part of what we do, our primary objective is education. And we'll get into that on today as well as we talk about this piece that came out in the New York Times. But first, I want to do a couple of housekeeping things. We want to let you know that as well as being a nonprofit organization, where you can donate and write off on your taxes and everything that we do and that we have done since our formation in 2013. We've done because of the generosity of our donors. You can go to ibsi.org. You can click on donate, and there's different drives that are there. In 2 days, today's the 29th, in 2 days starts our annual Black History Month fundraiser, right? We call it 100K in 28 days, although it's a leap year this year. So it's 100K in 29 days, right? So we want you to be prepared for that. Share that with us, for us. Will be our link, that graphic that you see there. Those of you able to see, if you're on IG, you can't see that link right there or that graphic, but it is posted on our wall there on IBSI. So we want you to help us get the word out about that. Again, to all of our donors, we appreciate you enabling us, empowering us to do our work. So again, 100K in 29 days begins early morning, I believe midnight, East Coast time, February the 1st, which is 2 days from now. So please help us with that drive, and we do appreciate it so much. On behalf of our staff and our IBSI ambassadors, whom again you'll be hearing from, you're not sure who our IBSI ambassadors are. They are part of what we call our Peace Initiative, Plan for Education, Advocacy, and Community Engagement. They actually were the pilot of these amazing young men and women who did a 9-month study about all things concerning Africa, Israel, Black America. We went through lots of different topics and everything: the founding Israel, the ancient Israel, modern Israel, the United Nations, the Civil Rights era, Black history. We talked about the Negro spirituals. There's a lot of things that we covered together. And then we took 2 trips. Last December was the motherland. Last December was December 2022, yes, motherland. And then June 2023 was the Holy Land. We had an amazing time. And so again, you'll be hearing from some of them as well pretty soon. Got some stuff coming up there. And then also events. Not that they haven't been already making noise where they are, right? So, but events, if you go to ibsi.org/events, I believe it is, you will also see the events that we have, live events that are coming up and possibly in your area. I'm not looking at the whole screen there, but there's a QR code that's there too that you can actually, if you scan that, obviously you can go right to the page, right to our homepage, and then also to our event page. I will be in boy, I didn't get in outside. It's not it's the Atlanta area. My brain is doing that thing again. Hampton, Georgia, right outside Atlanta, at Agape International Ministries Incorporated. Pastor Lucius and Donna McDowell. I will be in Hampton, Georgia, in 2 weeks, on Saturday, February the 10th, and then joining them on worship for Sunday, February the 11th. And we will be doing the live version of Africa's and Black America's prophetic call to Zion. This has been scheduled, and I was introduced. Shout out to Mr. David Walker, D. Walk. He introduced me to Pastor Lucius McDowell a little while ago. And then while I was still on staff with Kufi at the time, several years ago, maybe 2 or 3 years ago. No, wow, goodness gracious, 3 or 4 years ago. I can't timing, guys. Please forgive me. But we weren't able to connect at that time, and so we reconnected here just lately, particularly post October 7th. Everyone, post October 7th is a reality, a new reality for all of us. First and foremost, our Israeli brothers and sisters. The horrendous massacre and abduction of some 1,300 Israelis on October the 7th. Israel is still dealing with the aftermath of that now, as it, among other things, prosecutes the war against Hamas in Gaza, which we'll get into in a moment and everything. And what I've shared with people is that pastors throughout the country, being several pastors, Black pastors throughout the country, and we work with and serve different pastors and ministries. We've had the privilege of doing that for a while, and they wanted more resources, wanted information. And when I tell people that these pastors who stand with Israel maybe wanted some more resources, wanted to know what was going on. We did a briefing maybe a few days after the attacks themselves, had some other conversations, and so now we are planning live events. So Saturday, February the 10th, Sunday, February the 11th, you can join us there in the Atlanta area. Hampton, Georgia, we're headed there in your area, and we're looking forward to being with you. You click on events, ipsy.org/events, and then you will see those dates there. If you go to dates, when you go on there too, it's actually show you the list of those. My son Joshua, who's the executive director, he will be in Miami, Florida on February the 25th for Black and Jewish Solidarity, a conversation. He will be joining with Miss Sarah Akiba. They're going to have an amazing time there, and that conversation it's so timely right now. So again, you can click on that as well on the events page, and then you can just RSVP there, and we would love to see you there as well. All right. Miss Producer, am I forgetting something else that I need to /day? All good. All right. I think we got that. Yep. All good. All right. All right, everyone. So we want to there was a title that this was given, again, for those of you usually on Clubhouse. My apologies, we're able to do it here. This forum today, 29th of January 2024, is exclusively dedicated to this issue of this piece. There was a piece in the New York Times on yesterday, now Sunday, the Sunday edition of the New York Times. I don't know if it was in the print edition or not. I don't get the print edition. I just saw it online. And if you have a graphic for that, Ms. Producer, you can put that up. It's the title of it is that Black pastors or Black faith leaders are basically demanding that Joe Biden, amend his support for Israel in this fight against Hamas. Black pastors, the title of the article is Black Pastors Pressure Biden to Call for a Ceasefire in Gaza. And there's a subtitle, Black Congregants Dismay at President Biden's President Biden's posture on the war could imperil his re-election bid, right? So this is and I can see some of the comments that are on there. For those of you who, particularly if you're new, that is not our stance. The Institute for Black Solidarity with Israel is in no way calling for a ceasefire. We're actually dealing with the article in which Black pastors, those Black pastors mentioned in this article and the different associations demanding a ceasefire. And we're going to get into it here. Oh, and ladies and gentlemen, the reason why you'll see in a moment why we had to take this time and dedicate it, because this is connected to several different things. And we're going to start with the most important portion first. First of all, the article that is again, and you, if you haven't seen it, we put the link up there for those of you guys who can read it yourselves. Um, um, we actually working on an op-ed now. It might be published on tomorrow to give what's called the other side of that. Good evening, Pastor Hall. How you doing? Shout out to you down there in the Atlanta area as well. Atlanta, we coming your way again, February the 10th, Saturday, February 10th and 11th as well. So we need to deal with, so first things first. The title of the article is very descriptive of where it's going. In other words, it deals with, among other things, the political ramifications for the Biden presidency among Black voters in his reelection bid, right? It actually it talks about how he is getting pushback from Black pastors or faith leaders. It says faith leaders in general, but it doesn't mention mosques, right? So it's only talking about Christians, right? There are Black pastors, and in the article itself, it talks about there's 1,000 pastors representing hundreds of thousands of congregants that are demanding that Biden again amend his support. They are concerned, it talks about, with the violence, the bloodshed, all of these things. So I want to, I'm pulling up something else here because I want you to, you'll get a couple of clips from it here. There's a theme that runs in this article, right? That's political and ideological, right? And this is where we're going. It is dealing with the politics and ideology, a specific political framework in discussing this topic, the issue of Israel's war against Hamas after October the 11th, right? After the 7th, I'm sorry. That therein lies most of the problem. It is political and ideological. It is not practical, nor is it moral, right? Meaning, it comes from the perspective of what Joe Biden needs to do to appease Black voters in order to salvage his reelection chances, knowing that he's going to be depending on the Black community. And then supposing that it doesn't say this, but it infers it. So I have to go here, first of all. There's, in my opinion, a certain amount of gaslighting happening both in the article and what it actually references as well. Meaning, in the reading of the article, we're preparing an op-ed now. For example, the word Israel appears about 14 times, I believe. The word Hamas about 5. I'm going somewhere. In one of the pieces that the article references, it doesn't reference it by name, but in the Atlanta Constitutional Journal, am I saying it the right way? Am I saying it the wrong way? The Atlanta Journal Constitution, maybe saying it the right way, wrong way. It's an actual paper. It's a site. The mid part of January, there were faith leaders in the Atlanta area who signed a similar sentiment. It actually is an ad that says, and it's there on there, Black Georgia faith leaders demand ceasefire. Now, the reason why I'm mentioning this separate ad, separate from the New York Times piece, is that the New York Times piece seems to heavily reference this ad taken out in Atlanta. Now, references that is taken on other places. We haven't seen it in other local papers and everything, but that may very well be the case. I mentioned that one in part because of the 5 different pastors that are profiled that are quoted from in the New York Times piece, and you can read it yourself. At least 3 of them are the same pastors whose names appear in the Atlanta area, whose names appear on the ad. Now, I'm not attacking the pastors. I'm not attacking this. That I need you to stay with me here as we walk this out. That's why we have to take some time doing this, right? In the Atlanta piece, the ad there, remember I told you they mentioned Israel several times. In that piece, they mentioned Israel, if I'm not mistaken, 7 times. It mentions Gaza about 10, 11 times. The numbers may be off. And it mentions Hamas 0 times, right? In the ad, demanding a ceasefire of the faith leaders who put their names on that ad, right? Whose names were added to that advertisement there that was in that Atlanta Constitutional Journal. And please forgive me if I'm saying it the wrong way. Am I saying it the wrong way? I'll make sure I'm not saying it the wrong way. In that ad, it references Dr. King several times. Ironically, never once any of his statements in favor of standing with and supporting Israel. It just mentions him in the issues of justice, which he obviously, this is what the man stood for, but it very conveniently doesn't mention that Dr. King said, I see Israel, and never mind saying it as one of the great outposts of democracy in the world and a marvelous example of what can be done. Gaslighting, right? And they infer that somehow Dr. King and what it calls the Black church prophetic tradition, I actually use that same phrase in my book, Zionism in the Black Church, right? It infers that somehow Dr. King would be in favor of a ceasefire. We at IPSI never use that. If Dr. King were here today, he's not here. He was killed going on 60 years ago, right? Dr. King of blessed memory. We don't know what he would say. We do know what he did say while he was here and spoke for the vast majority of the Black civil rights movement, right? In standing with Israel, never dismissed the concerns regarding the Arab population. He even talked about there needing to be a Marshall Plan where we lift up those who are at the bottom of the economic ladder and bring them into the mainstream of economic security. So Dr. King was never unconcerned about both the Arab and the Israeli side of the conflict. He just did not blame Israel for the plight of the Arabs, nor did the vast majority of the Black civil rights community, right? This is one of the things that's been lost. Thank you. The Atlanta Journal Constitution. Thank you. The Atlanta Journal Constitution. So we don't have the link for that, but we do have the graphic, and we showed that graphic, right? In that particular ad, Hamas is not mentioned once. Not one time, and not one time in the ad in which it's saying that these Black faith leaders are calling for a ceasefire. It doesn't mention Hamas at all. I also we noticed that CARE also, CARE, Council on American Islamic Relations, did a type of press conference together with that with the people who are representing those faith leaders, right? We didn't get a copy of that actual press conference and everything, but they mentioned and they referenced that. And I thought that was interesting, again, because in that Atlanta ad, Hamas not mentioned at all, right? So the New York Times piece mentions Hamas a few times, right? And it does it from the perspective of, again, giving a nod to what the atrocities that Hamas visited on Israel on October 7th. But unfortunately does the thing of drawing an equivocation, meaning what Hamas did was bad, but what Israel is doing is bad. So we should all stop being bad. I'm not trying to be facetious, but I am trying to drive home a point. And the danger of that ideology. Oh, we're giving an ideology. The danger of the ideology says, everybody be nice. Everybody stop fighting. Let's just get along. That would be great. That would be wonderful, right? That'd be wonderful if we could just stop fighting and get along, right? The problem is that in this life, until Isaiah chapter 2 actually is ushered in, and swords shall be beaten in the plowshares and spears in the pruning hooks. Nation shall not lift up sword against nation, neither shall they study war anymore. Whether we get that whole, I'm going to lay down my burdens, that old gospel song, right? That's a wonderful thing. And we are looking for that great day, but we are not there yet. So the Bible also says there's a time for war and a time for peace, right? So it is not time to make nice after a terrorist organization has invaded your territory, slaughtered or abducted 1,300 of your people, are still holding many of them hostage, still firing rockets at you while declaring that they're going to come back and finish what they started on October 7th. Nice, let's all get along doesn't work there. This is the general problem with the peace and the mentality that it is putting forward. Israel is in Gaza eliminating Hamas. Hamas, who not only slaughtered or abducted some 1,300 Israelis, is vowing to do it again and again. Their words, right? Hamas, you know what, ladies and gentlemen? One of the things that let's say here, Hamas in its charter is dedicated to the destruction of Israel and the annihilation of Jews worldwide. This is their charter. This is not about, hey, shout out to Zephany. I see you out there, man. The war in Gaza is not for Hamas about territory or a two-state solution. Israel is fighting Hamas because Hamas, like the Nazis that they are, have declared that they will destroy not just the Jewish state, but the Jewish people worldwide. So what they did in Hamas's mind, what they did on October 7th is a down payment on what they feel is going to be the slaughter of Jews everywhere. In other words, telling Israel to cease fire is telling the Jewish people to go ahead and let the next Holocaust happen. You can see where we're going. Play nice is like saying be nice. It's like going back in time and telling Hitler and the Nazis and the Jews that they're destroying, oh, you guys, stop fighting. Let's just get along. See how insane that is? That's what this is. Now, I'm saying with Pastor Dumisani, what about civilian casualties? Two things we have to say about that. According to international law, any party in a military fight that puts its own people, puts civilians, I should say, at risk, and particularly not allowing them to escape, that party, meaning Hamas, is responsible for civilian deaths. Let's do the first thing, right? We got to. I'm having to deal with ideology, but I'm having to deal with it with some fundamental truths, right? This is so Hamas intentionally embeds itself among the civilian population. They've been doing that since 2000, particularly 2007, when it took complete control, right? Every last Jew was removed from Gaza in 2005 by the Israeli government. They gave it over to the Palestinians there. Hamas and Fatah, which is a branch of the PLO, were ruling together. Hamas decided to stage a coup, which they did. They killed the members of Fatah, drove them out, and they have been ruling Gaza exclusively since 2007. They began to turn it into a terrorist site, places where they would launch missiles and have all kinds of weapons and armament and dig tunnels into Israel, committed to destroying Israel. And they put those weapons and they put those tunnels and they put all things military around the most populated areas in terms of civilian population. What do I mean? Schools, mosques, hospitals, churches, the ones that are left, shopping centers. Hamas stores weapons and puts fighters in those places so that as Israel has to respond, there is a huge chance that the civilian population will be harmed. Israel, on the other hand, goes out of its way by dropping leaflets, sending text messages. It tries to, this not just since October the 7th, they've been doing this for years, trying to alert the civilian population to move to safer areas so that they are not harmed because they're having to go and deal with Hamas, again, who has embedded itself in that population. In that scenario, unfortunately, civilians will get harmed because there's no way to perfectly strike a venomous enemy like that who has surrounded himself, right? Not only that, surround himself with civilians and dresses as civilians. Not like Hamas puts on these different uniforms. Yes, some of us, we've seen those pictures of Hamas in the kind of green things and the bandanas, all that kind of stuff when they're kind of profiling and styling for the cameras. But when they're fighting like they're fighting now, they will dress in T-shirts, in jeans, and they will dress as regular civilians while they are attempting to kill Israeli soldiers who are there to fight them. Why? Because they want to confuse the IDF about who is who. Now, this has all been documented. None of this is new, just like this whole new movement about defund UNRWA. The Trump administration stopped funding UNRWA back in 2018. I'll come back to that because we have to deal with ideology, right? The Biden administration comes in, starts refunding, I shouldn't say refunding, but starts to fund UNRWA again, starts to send millions of American taxpayer dollars to UNRWA, not to mention the sanctions relief to Iran, not to mention the billions of dollars to the Palestinian Authority. And lo and behold, they take all of that fresh cash and they start killing Israelis again. Who would have thought about that, right? Exactly. They're doing exactly with the money what they said they were going to do. And yes, we must pause for humanitarian aid. Again, Hamas 100% controls everything that happens in Gaza. So when you are sending humanitarian aid to the people of Gaza, you are actually sending food and energy and all these things. It's going to Hamas. That's what's happening. So here. Let's drill down on ideology. Because if you, like me, are horrified at the deaths of any women, children, whether they're Palestinian, whether they're Israeli, whether they're Sudanese, whether they're Nigerian, whether they're Chinese, if you are horrified at the deaths and destruction of particularly people, if they're quote unquote non-combatants, right? They're not fighting the war, right? Then you should then be equally horrified and dismayed and even angered at why. See, if we're going to deal with the reality of where we are, the IDF is in Gaza because of what Hamas did in Israel on October 7th. In other words, we wouldn't even be having a conversation about black faith leaders, white faith leaders, whoever they are, demanding a ceasefire in Gaza had Hamas not done what it did on October 7th. Oh, and by the way, says they're going to do it again and again and again. So Israel has two choices. Either in one, defeat Hamas in Gaza, or two, leave Hamas alone, ceasefire, and let Hamas continue to slaughter Israelis. Clearly, for any honest person, those are not two real choices, right? There's only one choice there, unless you have a death wish and you want you and your family killed. So the demand for a ceasefire under those conditions is not plausible. It's not rational. It speaks to the desire, or at least the willingness, to see the Jews slaughtered in Israel and eventually everywhere. Why? Because Hamas says globalize the Intifada. What does that mean? Do what you did on October 7th in Israel, do that everywhere you find the Jews and the Christians and the Muslims who don't agree with this ideology. Oh, absolutely. Because, when Hamas killed those people on October 7th, they killed Jews, Christians, Muslims, Druze. They killed foreign nationals, people from South Africa, two Tanzanians, two agricultural students from Tanzania, and so on and so forth, right? Hamas slaughtered anyone they could get their hands on. They didn't care who they were, Muslim, Christian, Jew, they didn't care, right? They are telling the world, this is what we're going to do to you. We're going to start with Israel and going to do this everywhere. So why do I say in terms of ideology? When I mentioned that whole funding UNRWA, that type of thing. because, again, the article in the New York Times that says, again, we're talking about where the Black faith leaders are demanding that the Biden administration call for a ceasefire, meaning that Israel stop its campaign against Hamas in Gaza. We've already talked about why that's not doable if Israel wants to survive. Israel doesn't have a choice. Israel is doing what Israel has to do and is attempting to avoid civilian casualties in as much as possible. Say it's ideological. And here we get, ladies and gentlemen, to this part of the program where we have to deal with politics. Remember, I said in the beginning, politics, not so much, election politics. So we're talking about political ideology, because the mentality that says Israel must cease fire is coming from the ideological left. Pause. This does not mean that there are not Israel haters and Jew haters on the right. Goodness gracious, our Jewish brothers and sisters will tell you, left, right, center, Jew hatred is the most, it's the most amorphous of the types of hatred, right? It comes from everywhere, right? It comes from all sectors. And again, it's the oldest hatred in the world, starting when Pharaoh decided that there were too many Hebrews, right, in Egypt, right? So I am not saying that there is not Jew hatred on the right, plenty of it, right? But I'm talking about a leftist ideology that, unfortunately, particularly in our nation or in the West over these past several decades, that has been so infected with this stupid Marxist, this binary, your power versus the powerful versus the oppressed, and white people are evil and black folks are the oppressed, and all that kind of silliness that removes nuance and anything that has to do with any detail, right? Or that those who say all law enforcement, all police are pigs, all law enforcement is racist. See, that mentality, that, see, whenever I would see Israel supporters fall into that whole, the police are this, that, and the other, Israel supporters who on the left supported Black Lives Matter and that demonization of the police, so that when those same people of their friends started demonizing the Israeli police, then they want to get nuanced. Oh, no, the Israeli police, they're protecting the, no, so you don't get to do that. If you already went all in with all law enforcement is racist, all law enforcement, these are fascists, if you went there, when they applied that to Israeli law enforcement, see where I'm going? Now you want to have nuance. It doesn't work that way. Either there are law enforcement agents who are not good people, and that doesn't necessarily reflect on everybody else, or all cops are bad. You don't get to play the game when it's Israel versus somewhere else, right? Because this is what's happening right now. So the ceasefire is because Israel is seen as the oppressor. Israel is the persecutor, and the poor Palestinians, okay, again, and there are plenty of poor Palestinians. However, Hamas, the three top leaders, are worth something like $11 billion, live mainly in Qatar, very wealthy, very powerful. You don't think so? Look at how much influence they have over the South African government. Why did South Africa bring Israel to the International Criminal Court? Because they're working, the ANC, not the South African people, the African National Congress, because they work closely with Hamas. How does Hamas have so much sway and influence? Well, it starts with money. Lots and lots of money. Yes. So the ideology that says Hamas, that Israel's not being, and Israel needs to, and Israel needs to. If you saw or understood at all what happened on October 7th, and understand at all that Israel then needs to respond and deal with Hamas, but then turn and pivot and say, oh, but Israel has to stop because there's bad things that are happening. Again, you have to understand, Israel's doing all that it can to avoid civilian casualties, to avoid the harming of children and women. And what is Hamas doing? When you then express outrage about Israel, but not about Hamas. Remember I told you in the Atlanta Constitutional Journal, the Atlanta Journal-Constitution, I'm so sorry, the Atlanta Journal-Constitution, that Hamas's name wasn't even mentioned in that Black faith leaders thing about ceasefire. They didn't even mention it once. That's the gaslighting, ladies and gentlemen. That's the gaslighting. The gaslighting that says that somehow what's happening in Gaza is just this oppressive Israeli government who wants to keep people down. The other thing that happens in the New York Times piece, they mentioned that the black faith leaders, it says in there, want Israel to ceasefire. They're demanding that Joe Biden stop that support. Israel needs a ceasefire and the stop the occupation in the West Bank. That was the other thing. Wait. What does Israelis living in Judea and Samaria have to do with what's going on in Gaza? Right? Yes, if you haven't read the article, right, show up in there. The occupation of the West Bank. Oh, wait a minute. The writer of the piece brings up the occupation of the West Bank. Interesting, right? Because Hamas has said, not only is it not interested in a two-state solution, they want Israel destroyed. Hamas is not talking about settlements or the West Bank. And Hamas considers all of Israel from the river to the sea Islamic territory. And when they killed those people, they weren't in Judea and Samaria. They were on the border, the southern part of Israel. So why would then the piece that's talking about black faith leaders wanting to see a ceasefire in Gaza mention the West Bank, the occupation? Why? Because gaslighting, right? It's the implication. Okay, we're going further. Of the many comments that were made at the start of the war, I'm talking about post October 7th, and now Israel is prosecuting the war there. One of the people who did the equivocation thing was former President Barack Obama. What did he say? I can almost quote it verbatim. He was doing a podcast, or he was appearing somewhere on a panel, or he was speaking. And I'm not going to, we didn't even cue up the video. It's not important to do that. But he said, basically, what Hamas did, meaning October 7th, was reprehensible. There's no excuse for it. And then he said, but what the Palestinians are enduring is also what the former president did was equivocated, meaning he drew some sort of equal measure between Hamas's slaughter of Israelis on October 7th and what the quote unquote Palestinians are enduring. What do you mean by that? It is a way of very surreptitiously, very subtly explaining that what Hamas did have some merit because Israel is doing X, Y, to Palestine. This is the problem, right? Hamas, again, tells us themselves, we don't give a smack about settlements. We don't give a smack about it. We just want to see Israel obliterated and Jews. We are Nazis. Hamas basically says we are Nazis. Imagine again someone turning to Israel or to the Jews and going, you know what? If you stop provoking those Nazis, they stop trying to kill you. Imagine going to black folks in the segregated South. You know what, Negroes? If you would just stop being Negroes, the Klan would stop lynching you. If you would just stop being black Americans, then these white supremacists would stop trying to burn down your. Isn't that ridiculous? That's what the world is saying to Israel. You know what, Israel? Those settlements in the and this you need more. If you gave more work permits to the people of Gaza and Israel, if you would just stop demanding security of your borders, Israel, that's what's going on. So Hamas goes in, slaughter, says we're going to do it again and again. People going, you know what, Israel, you really need to be nice to them. If you would be nicer to Hamas, then still not done. The college campuses, which are pretty much ideologically left, that's one of the reasons why it's so rabidly anti-Semitic, what's going on there. Less than 48 hours after October 7th, there were campus groups, anti-Israel campus groups, pro-Palestinian campus groups that were staging demonstrations. I was talking to the UNC football team, had the privilege of addressing them a couple weeks ago. Shout out to Andy Dinkin. And we were talking about what's going on campuses and everything. And I believe it was my wife. She attended there back in the day, UC Long Beach. Yeah, Long Beach State. They did. I'm not going to put it up here. They did an event about resistance and championing resistance, and on their flyer was a picture of the paraglider. It was a little cartoon drawing of the paraglider, depicting the paragliders Hamas paragliders who landed at the festival where those young people were and slaughtering those kids. Yeah, the college campus groups, many of them, are celebrating what happened. They are celebrating the death and the abduction of the Israeli. They're still doing it now. The whole brouhaha about the whole Harvard and UPenn and MIT and those presidents of those universities refusing to condemn these calls from the river to the sea, intifada, and it's clearly these are intimidating and not just intimidating, but threats of destruction towards the Jews, not just in Israel, but here you're having Jewish students on campus barricading themselves in the library because these pro-Palestinian groups are coming for them, right? This is what's going on. It's so clearly it's funny if you thought it's about this is about the settlements, this is about Israel and the West Bank. Okay, even if you believe that, why are these people of that ideology attacking Jews on American college campuses? What the heck? So a Jewish student is responsible for the Israeli-Palestinian conflict and is fair game for people to come and bring the kafiyas and the Palestinian flags and tell them intifada, globalize the intifada. You see how insane that is, right? You see how that's just rife with anti-Semitism, right? No other students of any ethnicities are being cajoled or attacked or in any way molested in any way on these college campuses for anything that some other nation did or supposedly did. This is absolutely insane. Yet none of this is being acknowledged when you tell Israel to ceasefire. Ceasefire, leave Gaza, leave Hamas alone, make nice, and then act like everything else is cool, even though Hamas is saying they're going to try to kill more Jews. And they're not done, right? Okay. About a month ago now, I was in New York, and Ipsy has not really said anything about this. There is a amazing moment happening in which some Black Israeli leaders and Black American leaders are having conversations about a new era of Black solidarity with Israel. Nothing to do with our organization, right? I mean, I'm representing our organization, but this is not an Ipsy initiative, if you will. It's Ipsy helping shape, form, and kind of nurture it. We had a meeting in New York last month. Our next one is coming up later on in the spring, and will be a sort of summit. We're going to go to the United Nations, the Israeli ambassador to the United Nations. We're going to be with him and with others, and we're having this conversation about this Black connection to Israel and this new era, what needs to happen now. It's quite amazing what's happening, right? And we haven't said a whole lot about it because it's in its beginning stages, and I'm bringing it up here for a reason. While we're in New York, the group that we all met there, we saw the film that has been going around different parts of the world. It's about, I believe it's 47 minutes. And it's the same film that the Israeli Knesset saw of the atrocities on the October the 7th. It tells you on there, the ambassador actually introduced the film, and we watched it, and you saw unspeakable things. And even then, they couldn't show. They said it was just a tiny fraction of what actually happened on that day. Right? It was very, very shaking, disturbing. Again, just the the demonism, right, by Hamas, which is funded largely by the Islamic Republic of Iran, which that always has to be stated. After the film, there were two Israelis who actually also came with the ambassador. They have been traveling across the country, talking to others, like our group who had seen the film. They looked exhausted. I'd never met them before, so I can't compare. But when I say they look exhausted, and they did look exhausted, you could see in their faces. Not that they didn't look good. They look good. I'm not saying something negative or bad about them. You could just see on their faces that just been through so much. Right? There's a young. I believe they were brother and sister. Um, the, they made comments, and then the young lady said something. She made two statements. I'm not going to share the second one, and it's not a teaser. It's just that I'm still. I'll have to write about that probably in a piece. Africa Israel Weekly. Go to ibsi.org. Click on Africa Israel Weekly, and you can see it. I'm dealing with ideology. Africa Israel Weekly, and my son did a couple pieces. Just check out, because we are not just on this, but different issues around Israel, Africa, Black Americans, Jewish people, that whole thing, right? She made two statements. I'm not going to mention the second one. I will mention the first one. This is not coming from Ibs. This is what this Israeli young lady said. She said, and I'm paraphrasing because I can't say it exactly like she said it, but she said it more than once. We are traveling, showing this film to different audiences. They've been focused on America, right? I think they were planning on doing some things in Europe as well, but they were focused on America. She said, we are having problems scheduling this film for left-leaning audiences. She said that when we offer to show the film and appear in whatever the venue is, you fill in the blank, church, synagogue, university, whatever. She did whatever, wherever it goes. She said, we basically, largely, she said, people on the left don't want to see the film. We didn't ask. She made a political statement in regards to the film about the slaughter of the Israelis. The slaughter of the Israelis is not political, unless you want to talk about the Islamist ideology of Hamas. Yes, that's religious and political. But I'm talking about has nothing to do with the Israelis on the left, Israelis on the right. In other words, Hamas didn't care. Hamas didn't care if you're Likud, if you're Yeshatid, if you're a middle center right, if you liked Biden in the White House, if you like Trump. Hamas didn't. But she said, as we are trying to show this film, she said, we are having problems trying to get left-leaning audiences to watch it. That was the first statement. She said another statement again. I'm not going to say the second statement. Why am I saying that? Here is where we are. One of the things that has been noteworthy, not that we're surprised about what has been happening over the past few years. The Biden administration opened the troughs for Hamas, for the Palestinian Authority, reducing of sanctions on Iran, all of which who are working together with Islamic Jihad and Hezbollah and everything to destroy Israel. And right on cue, as the money flowed to them, the deaths of Israelis, when I'm talking about even before you get to October 7th, some were calling it a third intifada. Israelis were being attacked in Jerusalem, in Tel Aviv, and all over the country, right? The Taylor Force Act, which was passed by Congress back in 2018, which makes it against the law to knowingly fund Palestinian terror, knowing if the money is going to be used. Do you realize, those of you watching, I'm sure, that after October the 7th, Mahmoud Abbas, the president of the Palestinian Authority, announced that they're going to be paying millions of dollars in salaries to the people who the families of those who slaughtered those Israelis. There's not a daylight of difference between Hamas and the Palestinian Authority. There's not very much difference, right? So these are the entities that have been receiving millions, now billions of taxpayer dollars over the last 3 years. What's your point, Pastor Misani? It could be easily stated that October the 7th, it's very difficult for October the 7th to happen without all that money. And then for the people, well, Pastor Misani, you're saying that you're being ideological. I'm not being ideological. No, ideological is an Israeli young lady telling me that people on the left generally don't want to see this film. That's ideological. I didn't say it. She said it. We didn't even ask a political question, right? Because in the room, there are people on the left, right? The black leaders that are in the room, some were on the left, some were on the right. We never get into it. At some point, well, I'm sure we'll start to unpack that. But that wasn't what our initial meeting was about. We were just talking about the state of where we are, what's happening with Israel, kind of getting a lay of the land, right? There wasn't a political conversation. The only politics that were interjected is when this Israeli young lady, I'm not saying she did something wrong, she just basically said, thank you for being here. She told him, thank you for watching this. Thank you. But here's the thing. He said, we're trying to show this film to American audiences on the left. They don't want to see it. They don't want to hear about it. What's your point? If the article written in the New York Times is not so much about Israel, but about Biden's re-election chances, you see where I'm going? The whole text, the context of the article, Black faith leaders demand ceasefire, wasn't about Israelis, really, or the Palestinians. It darn sure wasn't about how Gaza, how Hamas oppresses the Palestinians, right? Our next educational, one of our next educational videos coming out with IBSI, ibsi.org. Click on videos. One of our next ones coming up in the next month or so is going to be about freeing Palestine from Hamas and the Palestinian Authority and the PLO. And we'll list just some of the many, many human rights abuses that happened to the people, both in Judea and Samaria, what they call the West Bank, and in Gaza every day. Every day, no freedom of the press, no freedom of religion in that sense, because Christians are often persecuted, no freedom of assembly. I mean, the journalists are routinely arrested, tortured, killed. Happens all the time. But none of the Palestinian supporters in the West will talk to you about that. They only want to talk about Israel and its conflict with the terrorists. They don't want to talk about real Palestinian human rights. That, unfortunately, is an ideological approach. Why? That whole binary. Israel is strong. Israelis are quote-unquote white, which is not true. Black, white, and brown. Therefore, they're wrong. Therefore, the brown Palestinians, it even says one of the faith leaders in the piece in New York says the Palestinians are oppressed. We, mean black people, are oppressed. Therefore, we identify with them. With all due respect to that faith leader, I'm not oppressed. Oh, I know what racism is. I know what racism is. I know what discrimination is. But free black man, I reckon and can fight for whatever rights I don't feel that I had. All those types of things, right? So, but if I come at it from a mentality of I'm oppressed, that already is giving you an indication of where I'm probably going, where the whole Gaza war is concerned. It is ideological, is political. Like I said, again, the piece is about politics and ideology, not about morality, not about justice, not about security. And the problem is that if you're not going to deal with the substantive issues, you get boilerplate stuff like, let's just all get along. The Institute for Black Solidarity with Israel mainly focuses on education for many different reasons. Number one, because it's the thing that's most needed, whether we're in black churches, whether we're talking to black students or whatever, because we wind up giving information that is often not readily available in the press, media, and unfortunately, sometimes even within the pro-Israel community. What do you mean by that, Pastor Misani? See, part of the fundamental flaw, generally speaking, with all due respect, often what happens in the pro-Israel space in the States is that when those organizations do approach black people, it's often done in a tokenizing way, meaning if I am not seeking to educate and empower, but I just need some black faces to stand here and hold Israeli flag and say, I'm Israel Chai, I'm actually contributing to the problem because I'm doing a veneer thing, but I'm not actually giving them substantive information so that when their parishioners or when their students come to them and say, Israel's committing genocide, Israeli soldiers are raping Palestinian women, all those things are lies, I haven't really prepared, and Israel's an apartheid state. Zionism is racism. If I haven't unpacked those things, and if I haven't really educated and shown and shared and had very candid conversations, I haven't prepared those black leaders. I wanted them for their black faces. I wanted them in those pictures. I wanted them to stand by the Sea of Galilee and take a picture, stand by the Western Wall, take a picture, and say, Louis, we took black people to Israel. Wonderful. Did you empower them? Did you tell them about how the Palestinian leaders have been targeting their community since the 1960s? Did you tell them that the Black for Palestine mentality actually came out of the PLO, which was actually formed by the KGB? Did you actually tell them that there needs to be the understanding that not just Israel is multi-ethnic, but that here Hamas, its mentality is the same as Boko Haram that's slaughtering Christians? Well, what does that have to do with the Pastor Misani? Do you want them to understand or don't you? Or do you just want black faces? You want to make your little, this is what we did this month and send it out to your people? Fine, do that, right? The problem is that now you need black leaders who are knowledgeable about what's happening and are empowered to speak up, and you're struggling. I'm telling you, you're part of the reason why. These leaders either have not done their due diligence, Pastor Hall said, to learn and know the truth, or they flat out are against Israel. Dr. Hall, Pastor Hall, you couldn't have said it any better. We tell our kids all the time, there's two reasons why you don't know something. Either you just don't know it or you don't want to know. Right? There's either I don't know, I haven't been told, no one has explained to me yet, or I have been explained and I don't want to know. Right? And here the problem is when ideology sets in, and all I have for you is some quotations, Black Lives Matter, and Israel, just to give you some just titles, but I'm not actually dealing with the substance. Then I'll do stuff like, oh my God, this building was bombed in Gaza. Oh my God, they're killing. Oh my God, this is destruction. Oh, this is real difficult. Israel is bad. Wait a minute. Do you know what happened? Yeah. Well, I acknowledge that Hamas did these things, and that was really mean. But now Israel is doing something, and that's really mean. This ain't Romper Room. This ain't Sesame Street. This ain't, man, this is real life. I wish someone would have told the black folks of Wall Street and Black Wall Street 1921 after when the white folks were coming there to destroy it. Y'all just need to be nice to those white people. If y'all stop being so mean to white people, they won't come try to destroy Black Wall Street. See how? Yeah, that's how that worked. I've had the honor and the privilege over a decade now of working with and serving with black leaders, black church leaders across the country since around 2013. These are amazing men and women of God, laboring in the word of God, preaching the gospel, serving their community, right? And I count it an honor and privilege. Just as I'm headed down to Hampton, Georgia in a couple of weeks, I count it an honor and privilege to go and be with Pastor Lucius McDowell. Again, we'll be there in Hampton, Georgia. Go on our website, ibsi.org/dates or events. I believe it is. You see on there. And the reason I'm saying this for a reason. And I have found over a decade that the vast majority of black Christian pastors love and stand with Israel. So you're cynical. Oh, Pastor Misani, that can be true. Just calm down. What I've also found is that often they are not informed. I'm not talking about how intelligent they are. They're brilliant. But they're not informed. Whether they've been connected with other pro-Israel organizations or not, they have not really been informed about what's happening. So we unpack sometimes difficult conversations for them to see. And often they'll tell me, I didn't know that. I didn't see that. And we'll give them all the receipts. We'll just talk about what we think. Here's boom, here's this article, here's this information, here's this stats, here's this data, here's what's going on in HBCUs, here's what's going on in the other campuses. And when they see those different things, sometimes difficult conversations, what's happening, the Ethiopian Israeli community, the Mizrahi community, we're talking about all these different things. What we found is that they are largely receptive and thankful for the information. So when I read the piece in the New York Times, one thing that kept coming to me was that I see the names that are placed on here. A, how many of them are aware of what's happening, right? Before we get to the part of whether or not they're ignoring it, how many are aware of what's happening, right? And are these people who are open being empowered to know what's actually going on? We're hoping that the op-ed in response to this piece in the New York Times is published on tomorrow. If it is, you'll see it on our social media. I'm working with a friend now about finishing, as I'm finishing writing it, where it's going to get placed. So we'll let you know. We were just doing that on today because we've been swamped with a bunch of stuff. As a matter of fact, I'm headed to Washington, D.C. on tomorrow evening to meet with, among other people, our good friend, Mr. Charles Jacobs of the American Anti-Slavery Group. IBSI has partnered with that organization. And there's a delegation of Nigerians who will be there, and they'll be talking about, among other things, what's going on in Nigeria. The war against this Islamic genocidal, this Islamist genocidal mentality, again, who kill Jews, Christians, Muslims, right? Israel's on the front line, and Africa's been dealing with it for decades, ladies and gentlemen, not to mention the slave trade, which goes back millennia. And so we are partnering with these organizations to bring awareness and put pressure even on our government to not to invade any country or anything, but to actually be more proactive when it comes to uncovering these things. So I'll be there for a few days in Washington, D.C., meeting with Charles and some of those other leaders there. Simon Deng, who is a former Sudanese slave, he's been working with Charles Jacobs for years. He wrote an amazing piece in Tablet. If you haven't read it, you've got to read it. And Maria, I'd even pull it up or anything like that. But I know we're a little over time here, but an amazing piece in which Simon Deng says that what happened to the Israel on that day, October the 7th, is just like what happened to him in Sudan when the Islamic terrorists came and killed members of his family, enslaved them, the whole thing. He said, right down to details, right? So there's more than one way. My son Joshua had mentioned Charles's piece last time, but along with Charles's piece, which is also very powerful on Tablet, Simon Deng did one as well. So you need to look at that one. It actually talks about, again, the parallels that are there. So we will be enjoining other Black faith leaders as we build a momentum, what we say it's time for a modern day abolitionist movement. What Israel is dealing with, where Hamas and Islamic Jihad and Hezbollah and these other terrorists are concerned, is what's happening to Black faith leaders in Africa. Boko Haram, Al-Shabaab, the Fulani herdsmen. Unfortunately, this is happening and not enough attention is being drawn to it. IBSI will be drawing that attention as well, drawing those parallels so that people understand the nature of the fight. All right, I've gone over time a little bit. There's even more to share, but we're not going to be able to do it all here on tonight. This video will be up. It'll be on our YouTube page. It'll be on other channels. Everything will be some other clips that we'll put out about it as quickly as we can, as we're working on some other projects. Again, I want to thank you for joining us here. Shout out to our amazing producer there, Miss Maria, who's helping us keep everything straight. I believe that Joshua Washington, the executive director, will be back in place on next week. I hope this has been helpful to you. Again, there's much more. This is a difficult place to stop, but there's much more we could talk about, but we're going to have to pause here. I want to remind you again that in 2 days starts IBSI's Black History Month fundraiser. 100K in 29 days. We also going to be sharing that link, sharing it with others. Give. We are a nonprofit organization. Whatever you give is tax deductible. Again, shout out to all our amazing donors and supporters, whether it's on IPSI Substack, which is Africa Israel Weekly, which is also just the donating in different areas, and the live events. Again, you go on our website, you'll find out about where we're going to be in the Atlanta area, where we'll be in Miami, both in February and other places. Shout out to our friends out there in Milwaukee. We're looking to be joining you soon. We don't have the dates just yet, but we're working on that as well. So yes, someone's asked me a question there, helping Sudanese war, Israel helping. We found that Israel was helping even before there was a South Sudan. Israel was helping the Sudanese there, who in their fight against the Islamic terrorism. Someone said, any thoughts on Ilhan Omar's recent speech in about Somalia? Oh yeah, I have lots of thoughts on it, but I can't share it right now. Let me just say this as I'm closing. Ilhan Omar, who has accused American Jews of having dual loyalty where Israel is concerned, is out there spitting on Somaliland as a Somalian. See that? See, that's a whole other cut. Here she is. If you haven't done Google it, you'll find it. We can't get on right now, but just first thing I thought was this same woman, in her hatred for Israel and Jews, had the audacity to attack Israeli Americans, Jews who support Israel, which is absolutely nothing wrong with that. And she is out there, I mean, goodness gracious. So yes, yeah, that's been, and she's been dealt with kid gloves. She's been able for years to say what she said in Congress, got almost zero pushback from those who should have been pushed back. That's another conversation. Don't get me started. All right. Anyway, thank you all so much for coming. This is our IPSI's Forum on Israel, Africa, and Black America. I'm Dumisani Washington, the CEO and founder of the Institute for Black Solidarity with Israel. We are here each Monday at 8 p.m. on all of our social media channels. We were not on Clubhouse this time. We should have Clubhouse back up and running on next week. But again, thank you so much for being here. You all have an amazing rest of your January. Looking forward to an amazing February and our traveling and seeing different people in different parts of the country. And again, let's continue to speak truth, ladies and gentlemen. It might be difficult, might be uncomfortable at times, but truth is the only thing that actually brings real justice. And in our faith tradition, Jesus said, truth will make you free. If you're not going to deal with truth, you're not going to have freedom, you're not going to have justice. It's got to be based on truth. Thank you so much, everyone, for coming. Looking forward to seeing you guys next week. Blessings. Thank you, everybody.